Well, welcome back to Sports Nightly. Hello, everybody. My name is John Baylor, standing in because we have a terrific opportunity to visit with the president of the University of Nebraska System, President and Dr. Jeffrey Gold. Dr. Gold, great to see you.
It's a great pleasure to be with you today.
Now, Dr. Gold, the Huskers just wrapped up the Husker Games. It's a reimagining of what was formerly known as the Spring Game, and Memorial Stadium and other locations, including the John Cook Arena in the Bob Devaney Sports Center, were buzzing with energy. What stood out for you from that day?
Well, just a phenomenal opportunity to rethink what we used to call the Spring Game, an opportunity to bring in both men's and women's sports together, to reach out to a much broader cohort of our fan base, and to send a very powerful message that Husker athletics is alive and well.
Now, you've talked about the evolving university strategic plan as a roadmap to becoming not just excellent, but extraordinary. Now, how does that strategic plan, that journey, connect back to the value we provide at the University of Nebraska System to all Nebraska families and communities?
As I've said many times, one of the most important things we want to do every day is make Nebraskans proud of their university. And one of the ways we do this is we create value. And we create that value by building future workforce together, meaning the young men and young women who enhance their careers through expanding their education horizons and the experience they have. We do cutting-edge research in so many different areas, whether it relates to the rural crop production or protein production, or whether it relates to healthcare, energy, security, and so many other different areas. But also we have a tremendous economic impact. Indeed, for every dollar invested in us, we return 10 to the economy of the state of Nebraska. So you think about it, that we're a multi-billion-dollar organization. Last time we measured this, we returned $6.4 billion with a B dollars to the economy of the state of Nebraska. As a matter of fact, if you marry together all the work we do in healthcare delivery and on the academic side, we're about 8.9, just under 9% of the total gross domestic product of the state of Nebraska. So future workforce and educational opportunities, research, cutting edge, and of course, tremendous economic development. And a lot of responsibility, but an awful lot of gain for the state of Nebraska.
The foundation on this beautiful campus, Dr. Gold, is the undergraduates right here. And most seniors at this stage of the calendar have probably made their decisions about where they might go to college, but juniors are still thinking about it. How important is it to you personally that those current juniors at Scottsbluff High School, Burwell, Omaha, Scott, Lincoln Southeast, come right here to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln or Kearney or Omaha?
It's critically important to all of us, and when I say all of us, I don't just mean we at the university, I mean the entire state of Nebraska and all of the communities that we serve. And while I understand that there are probably juniors and most likely sophomores and high school freshmen who are thinking about what their college careers might look like, if there are any seniors who want to rethink their decision, bring it on. And let's just say we will find a place for you and we will make you feel at home. And we will provide a high-value, high-quality educational experience that all of us, and myself personally, are committed to making sure that you will get everything you want out of your college experience and more.
To run these campuses requires a budget, and that includes help from the state. Their state budget continues to take shape at the state capitol. And of course, higher education funding is part of that conversation. Can you give us an update on where things stand with that, the state's contribution to this great operation?
I appreciate the question. We continue to work very closely with the legislature, particularly we've worked very closely with the Appropriations Committee to make them understand what our needs were and, very importantly, what the return on investment is. We have worked extremely closely with the governor's office, and of course, I'm sure the audience knows is that Governor Pillen served for many years as a regent of the University of Nebraska, so he personally understands the university's budget and some of the opportunities and the challenges that we are currently facing. So for all of those reasons, we're glad that we've made some progress. It's not everything we asked for, but we understand that the state needs to live in a very carefully thought through and well-planned budget model, just like we do in our homes and just like we do at the university.
Dr. Jeffrey Gold with us. He's the president of the University of Nebraska System. Now, Given the uncertainty around federal funding currently, how is the University of Nebraska positioning itself to weather potential changes while still staying focused on moving the campuses forward?
Well, we are laser focused on all of the federal changes that are occurring, and truthfully, a day or 2 days don't go by without us getting an email or some other communication saying we're pausing this funding, we're changing this grant, we're eliminating this program, and it's a very dynamic environment. And so our job is really, one, to be sure that we're very aware, take as much proactive and responsive steps, literally pivot on a dime. Secondly, to be sure that particularly for the high-profile items that we're hearing, that our federal delegation are well aware of them, because the more they can communicate among and between their colleagues and the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, and directly communicate with the White House, the departments and agencies of which we have tremendous roots and responsibilities, the better off we are. And then just to face the reality of what these changes mean. And unfortunately, none of them have been turned into, as yet, major increases in funding. They've really mostly been related to either pausing or eliminating research grants and contracts, programs, potential changes in what we call indirect cost recovery, which is the way we pay for floor wax and light bulbs in our research labs, and the people that shovel the snow and cut the grass. I mean, all of those are critically important determinations. We monitor this literally on an ongoing basis. So as of several weeks ago, we were down about $44 million in grants. It looked like we had a maximum risk for next year's budget of just under $70 million of indirect cost recovery, flattening, going to a flat fee of 15%. And then, of course, the biggest numbers come from the pipelines of research grants and contracts through the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, the Department of Energy, the Department of Agriculture, et cetera. And all of those are really seriously at risk, because even if they're paused, that's going to give us a delay in federal funding. And if you look at the totality of it, we do about $700 million a year of research grants and contracts on an annual basis. That adds up to just under $60 million a month. So if that's the case, do the math. If they're delayed 1 month, that's going to produce a funding gap of $60 million. If it's delayed 3 months, $180 million, and keep on. And we've been in a pause mode now for some time.
With those delays and potentially with the loss of that federal funding, what's the real cost on the ground? What, as Nebraskans, do we miss out on without that federal help?
I think the way this is going to get translated into reality on our campuses, and most importantly for all the communities that we serve, if the research productivity is decreased, there are people whose livelihood depends on that. We have faculty, staff, we have students that are engaged in research programs that are funded by the national institutes that I've discovered and related to you. We have people out on the farms and ranches that are supported by the Department of Agriculture and also supported by many of the federal agencies that support research in crop production and research in protein production as well. And all of that is going to ripple through the community. We may not feel it tomorrow because we, unlike many of our sister universities across the country, have not announced major layoffs. For instance, my colleagues in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins have recently announced a 2,000-person layoff as a result of some of these federal funding cuts. We have not done that, and largely because there are temporary restraining orders and injunctions in place where various class action lawsuits are pending to attempt to restore some of these research grants and contracts. But unfortunately, if they're not restored, we're going to have to make some very hard decisions which will impact the livelihood of many Nebraskans, and we'll feel it, broadly across the economy of the state. For every dollar in research funding that we receive, we return $16 to the state economy. Think of that. That's a 16-to-1 return. If you could get that return on an annual basis, with our personal finances, believe me, you and I would both sign up tomorrow, and we wouldn't be sitting here doing a radio show on the subject. So you think about it, if the federal government is going to reduce our funding by $1, that's $16 less that the legislature is going to have to appropriate next year. If they reduce us by $100 million, that's a lot of money that the legislature is going to feel the pinch of in terms of the economy of the state of Nebraska, not to mention the new discoveries in the bioeconomy, the new discoveries in healthcare, the new discoveries in energy and law, and so many other areas.
So a 16 times return for every federal dollar.
16 times,
Wow.
yeah.
All right, this is Sports Nightly. Back to sports was about 2 years ago, this August, when we had Volleyball Day in Nebraska. As you look back on that day, what meaning did it have to you, and what meaning do you think did it have for women's sports and for our state?
Well, it had a huge meaning to me personally. I was there and loved every minute of it, and to see more than 90,000 people gathered in Memorial Stadium. And mostly, frankly, as I walked around outside the stadium before the event began, I could see the excitement in all of the young ladies who played volleyball. Must have been in every high school across the state of Nebraska that were invited. And to see their energy and to see them wearing their team logo wear as they entered the stadium was incredibly heartwarming. And, you know, as I've heard about this from so many other people, not just our Big Ten peers, but some of the other athletic conferences, but even on the academic side of the house, when people talk about what this meant for women's sports, you know, put that on the heels of what's been going on in women's basketball, put that on the recent success, you know, of our softball team. God, you know, this whole situation with Jordy Ball and the world-class attendance that we've recently had broke every record. There's no question that women's sports are on the rise. You know, I'll tell you, I recently had the opportunity to host both the volleyball team and the women's basketball team at the President's Home to celebrate their success during the year. And by the way, the men's teams as well for their success. Actually recently hosted the wrestling team, and I'm about to set up an evening with the men's basketball team due to their success in the Crown tournament. I was actually out in Vegas with them, and I guess what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But that was very momentous as well. But to see the joy on these young women's faces and to realize that they're not only accomplished athletes, but they're academically spectacular, as well as just kids in many ways also. So I think the best is yet to come for women's sports for us here at Husker Athletics, across the entire university, and frankly, I think on a national and global level.
He's the president of the University of Nebraska Academic System. That's Dr. Jeffrey Gold. Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure.
For joining us right here on Sports Nightly. Stay right there. When we come right back, it's your home each weeknight, Sports Nightly.